I'll tell you what. We'll kick off with X. I'll talk, then Sharon talks twice, then I talk. All right, so let's kick off with X. So X is a. I'll set a timer going. X is a, as I said, it's essentially a slasher film. It's a slasher film that is influenced by slasher films of the 70s. So things like, there's things about this film that are very kind of like almost Friday the 13th. I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you can really see the sort of handprint of Texas Chainsaw Massacre on this film, especially because it's set in Texas. And the idea behind this, and what lends the X of the title its name, is the fact that you have a and Sharon, I'm apologize for making you blush. This might offend your sensibilities, but you have a pornographic film crew who are essentially traveling around Texas and trying to find a location in which to film a pornographic film. So it's quite a small crew. You have the performers in the film, you have the executive producer who is dating the person who he's trying to make the star of the film. He's kind of like, yeah, you're going to be a star, stick with me, and by the way, have a relationship with me. So not problematic at all. So
No triggers there.
yeah, it's like no problematic at all. And so he has that. You have the young director of the film whose girlfriend is a sound recordist, played by Jenna Ortega, and you have what's her name? Brittany Snow and Kid Cudi, or Scott Mescudi as he goes nowadays, but playing the main sort of actors in this film. And it's about them trying to find this place, and they find this secluded farm. I mean, everything about this, it's just kind of like, you tick off the box. Secluded farm in the middle of Texas, check. Old man and old woman who are a bit reclusive, who own the farm, check. And they say, okay, cool, can we just rent your guest house? So they have the guest house, and once they have the guest house, they're in the guest house, but nobody knows. Like, the people in the old man and woman in the house don't know what it is that they're doing in the guest house. And in the manner of horror movies, you probably already know where this is going. Bad stuff starts to happen to people.
What are the odds?
Bad stuff starts to happen to people. And I think this is one of those films that is very knowingly being this type of film. So this film is going, yeah, it's no surprise that people are going to get killed. It's no surprise that they're going to get picked off one by one. It's no surprise that when somebody says go downstairs into the basement and get that thing, that is a bad idea. You can see that's a bad idea, but the character's going to do it anyway. It's no surprise, and all these different things. And I think it's very knowingly made like that. As someone who's not a big fan of those films, I can't see everything that they're referencing, and I maybe can't quite get the nudge, nudge, wink, wink about it. The thing that I think is a bit different is because it's focusing on films, it's taking its lead from films of the 70s. And in that time, people who were making horror movies, and I think it does a sort of clever mirroring thing where it's mirroring scenes in the porno that they're shooting with scenes in the horror movie that you're watching, if you get what I mean. So they show you a scene, and then they show you this, and they show you the scene, and they show you this. Don't worry, not the main bits that you would expect in the horror, but like, you know, all the sort of like the setups of, oh, my daddy's not around, what are you gonna do about that, all that nonsense. and so like they're mirroring the both of them, and I think that there is some commentary being made about the nature of the porn industry and the nature of the horror industry, especially in the 70s, and how they were both a little bit maverick, and they were a little bit, the director of the porn film keeps talking about how he wanted to elevate the art and make something that has some sort of social commentary on it. And I know that with horror movies, that's something that they were doing. So in the 70s, the horror movie wasn't just about people getting killed, but there was some sort of commentary going on in there. And in this film, they seem to be making a point. Like, you know, you have the whole thing of the people who have sex in the horror movie die. so it's things, and in this they have this whole thing where the theme seems to be about youth versus age, and whether youth is wasted on the young, and whether older people resent younger people for being young, whether younger people think older people, and there's something in there that I haven't quite sort of like figured out that they're doing, but the motivations for the murders that happen is different from something that I've seen in horror movies before. So the film starts Mia Goth, and in very many ways, this is Mia Goth's film. It is her film. She's the person in the porno who is trying to be made a star, and it's almost as if this whole film was built to make her a star as well. So there's some sort of multi-level meta thing going on. There's bits where I think it's just like it's a slasher thing. There's bits where it has a sense of humor about the genre it is and the kind of things that it's going to do and about how stupid people are. And for someone who doesn't like horror movies, I didn't mind it that much. It doesn't hang around too long. I think it's probably about 90 minutes long, and
That's the average of the old horror films as well.
well, yeah, and I think you don't really need to be longer than this. So I would give it a 3 out of 5. Um, Although it did reinforce my thoughts that in a horror movie of this stuff, as long as you get into the cinema, excuse me, as long as you get into the cinema before the first person gets killed, you haven't missed anything. Because I was late for this film, and I walked in and I was like, yeah, that all I've missed is the setup. And it made me wonder, in these sort of films, has anything significant that you will miss ever happened before the first person gets killed? I mean,
Not really.
if
And
that's the
it's
case,
interesting because obviously back in the day, film classifications, X was the classification for horror and X was the
yes,
classification for porn films.
yeah. So yeah, that and that's I think that's why
And
it's
I
called
think,
X.
yeah,
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 so it's a nice little wink. There's some stuff in there that I think people who are more au fait with horror would pick up, and possibly people who are more au fait with porn.
yeah.
But I mean, I'm just kind of like, I think that's a reference, but I don't know. So,
I
so
think
it,
one of our friends, Joe, who's been on our previous podcast shows,
yeah,
um, that's, he did a little review on it when he went to see it with another one of our friends, Happy John.
oh yeah,
I think he picked up on a lot more of the references, but both of them know their 70s horror
yeah.
probably far more than I do. So I know his mini review of it was full of nods to other.
Yeah, it's one of the. I figured that it had to be full of those. I figured it had to be full of those. The kind of film that it was. It was quite knowing about those things, and I think it does them well. I just don't know enough about 70s horror.
And a lot of these films from the 70s became the video nasties of the sort of 90s. And a lot
Yeah,
of the filmmakers of today probably saw these films in that sort of the age of the video.
yeah,
And so they're come of age as filmmakers themselves. So you can understand how it may seem like a long, like 40 years ago, but these films were probably rediscovered 20 years ago. And now those filmmakers are going, you know what? We want to acknowledge the part
yeah.
of the films.
Acknowledge the people who inspired us, and hey, more power to them. The
That film I saw at the cinema in the lockdown, The Boys from County Hell, was an Irish horror film, but
yeah,
I could see in that loads of references to films of the 70s, horror films of the 70s, more around the sort of British end, like the American Wales and London types, but there were
yeah.
certainly loads of horror movies, and I probably missed most of the references in that. So I think it's that these people are coming of age as in their own right and nodding to their influences.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine so. But that was my thing. I think the biggest thing that I thought about it is I felt like there was enough. It wasn't just a slasher movie where you just kill
Yeah.
young people for the sake of it. I mean, it is that, but it's that with a little bit extra on top. I quite like some of the commentary that was going on. I like the way that they intercut scenes from both different films. It makes you wonder why they're doing that. It makes you question that, and also the commentary on age. The commentary on age is I think it's an interesting one that there's many ways in which you can make a film that comments on age. This is just one way that the director Ty West has decided to go. So bully for him. Anyway, so that is it for X.
What
Three
was your
stars for X.
rating for that one? Did I
Oh,
miss
three. No, yeah, 3 stars.
3 stars?
3 stars.